In this action-packed episode, we discuss a controversial Street Fighter game, a giant robot fighter, a wrestling game that may or may not have released, and more. There's a lot to cover, so let's jump right into it. This is Retro Impressions Unreleased Virtual Boy. Street Fighter II, one of the greatest and most influential games of all time, a game long rumored to be in production for the Virtual Boy, though never confirmed. Now clearly, you're looking at Street Fighter II for the Virtual Boy in action, and you may have even heard murmurings about this game on the system, so what's the story? For that, we need to go back to 1995. If Famitsu Magazine issue 336, an article was published discussing a rumor of Street Fighter II with two-player support being under development for the Virtual Boy. Their source even gave details regarding the opening screen, however Capcom denied working on the game or any game for the hardware. The console wasn't long for this world, and not much information was released regarding the projects under development during this period. Fast forward to 2010, and Alpha Gamboa, who was part of the art team for the upcoming fighter Skullgirls, posted a mock-up of what the game would look like if under development for the Virtual Boy. The idea, of course, was a joke, but it got people at Planet Virtual Boy thinking that if this was real, they would gladly help fund this project, and if it wasn't, well, they would gladly fund something else as long as it appeared to be handled by someone qualified to deliver a quality new product for their beloved Virtual Boy system. The conversation wasn't lost on onlookers of the forum, and one such person reached out to Benjamin Stevens, offering to create a game if Ben was willing to fund it. This person wanted to remain anonymous and is referred to as such. Mr. Anonymous had fallen on hard times, so he was in high hopes that a financial agreement could be worked out to where he could create a game for Ben while getting paid for his work. Ben was skeptical, but he felt he had little to lose. If this person could program a commercial-grade release for the price they were asking, it would be a steal of a deal. If not, well, it would be quickly apparent, and Ben could end his association without much financial loss, as they had agreed on a weekly progression payment system. Consideration for what the game should be was quickly narrowed down to a fighting game, more specifically a full conversion of Street Fighter II. The main reason being it was Ben's favorite game, and porting an existing game meant less overall communication and development time requirements. The original agreement was that I would pay Mr. Anon to make me, and only me, a one-on-one fighting game for the Virtual Boy. The purpose of this was to both help Mr. Anon out with his financial difficulties, and to make my wildest Virtual Boy dreams come true. I never planned to let it be known that this game was in my Virtual Boy collection, since I didn't want to tease others with what a great game I could play on my Virtual Boy. And I also have no plans to try to make a single penny off of this game myself, in order to try to recover any of the money that I spent to have this game made for me. Over the course of several months, progress was made until the game was finished and delivered as agreed upon. A demo was publicly released in 2013 by Mr. Anonymous, followed by 2 posts and then radio silence. Midway into 2015, copies of the complete game were being sold to longtime members of the Virtual Boy community, bringing attention from outside sources to something never intended to be made public. Discussion regarding the game grew, as did questions about where it came from, how people were able to get it, and when the ROM would be dumped. After some pressure, Ben created a post explaining his involvement, his main points being that he held no ill will toward Mr. Anonymous for selling the game, though it was never intended for public consumption or for profit. This was due to the use of Capcom's copyrighted property, which Ben felt might result in unwanted legal repercussions. A similar situation happened in 2013 with a Mario clone called Princess Rescue for the Atari 2600, which Nintendo promptly issued a cease and desist notice for when they caught wind of its existence. When discussing the situation with Hyperfighting, Ben stated, "I do realize that now that news about this game has gotten out, many are upset that they might never get to play this gem, at least not the full version of it. If that is the case, I hope that none of them will hold it against me. I also want to make it perfectly clear that I will never give anybody a copy of the ROM of the finalized game, as I will have no part in its distribution." For the most part, the community has respected this position, though some onlookers not familiar with the circumstances have lashed out about what they feel is gatekeeping of a game that should be made public. Speaking of this particular game, it's common to see comments such as this: "The Rare gaming community is probably the worst ever. A lot of toxic peoples sitting on their personal little mountain of irreplaceable, ultra rare things and bragging about it. That's how things are lost. In the preceding years, copies of the game have sold to people outside of the community, prompting efforts to dump the ROM, something that's been met with a bit of backlash. So, about the game. Most shocking is it contains 2-player support via a custom cable. You see, Nintendo had plans for a link cable which was commonly used for a number of their handheld systems to enable 2-player support. However, the Virtual Boy's life was so limited, this never released. 2-player mode does require 2 Virtual Boys and 2 copies of the game, so at this point, I'm sure very few people have ever got to experience it. According to those intimate with the development of the game, the art assets were pulled from the arcade, while the music is pulled from the PC Engine release. Having played the full version beating it multiple times, I can tell you that it's true to form, given an impressive representation of the anticipated home console experience. The complete game is there, along with some extras which can be unlocked via an in-game code. As the game was made for Ben, it shouldn't be a surprise that he's also a secret playable character. All you need to do is enter this code on the precaution screen. Ultimately, this is one of the finest games ever made for the system, and it's a shame that it can't be released in a more widely distributed form. While the Virtual Boy received consumer support for around 5 to 7 months, many companies who came on board were placed in a holding pattern, waiting for development units so they could start working on their projects. 18Co was one of the lucky few to have close ties to Nintendo, and thus got in early developing and releasing Panic Bomber, which is part of the Bomberman series. This wasn't their only game though. Before the Virtual Boy launched, 18 had another game in development called Invincible Iron Man Ga 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 In. This was in no way connected to Marvel's Invincible Iron Man, but an entirely new property pitched as a giant robot fighter. The game appears to be part of a multi-development contract between 18Co and Hudson, and because of this, it remains shrouded in quite a bit of mystery. First off, the game was never announced. It only became public knowledge in 2013 when someone from the development team posted a 50-second video of it in action. The video went up and came down within the same day. At the time, this went completely unnoticed outside of Japan. In 2016, information came to light about an unannounced game by 18 that was in development for the Virtual Boy. The information was shared by an unnamed person who had supposedly been tapped to create the soundtrack, but never really got started on it. In 2018, the cover for the design documents were released online, revealing to Western audience what had been discussed by those in Japan for over 5 years. Things were quickly confirmed. The video was real, the game was far enough along to be played, and a physical cart with the game on it did indeed exist. We also learned that the game used music from Panic Bomber, as the work on the soundtrack never really got off the ground. While there was hope for assistance from 18 in revealing more details, they were not willing to release any additional information on it. The person who made the original video public has released images of the cart while stating that they're unwilling to dump the ROM, release any additional footage, or scan any of the other design document pages as long as 18 is still in business out of fear of being sued. According to the founder of Planet Virtual Boy, the video she posted was taken down by request of stakeholders of the developer. It's difficult to share information about the game, as 18 still does exist and might go after her. She's a former Hudson employee and has a development ROM in possession. Unfortunately, she currently does not have a Virtual Boy, so she can't shoot a new video. 18 did chime in on the matter, stating, "We are game developers and develop games based on requests from clients. The contents of the request from the client are basically confidential matter. As a premise, we cannot answer whether Invincible Iron Man Ga 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 In existed or not, because we have a duty of confidentiality as a developer. Therefore, we cannot even answer who the client of the game is." J-League 3D Stadium was a licensed game based on the Professional Japanese Association Football, J-League. The game was slated for release in late March 1996, which may point to why it never saw the light of day. There is not much discussion about this game, but most people seem to peg J-Wing as the developer, something that I think is highly unlikely. Looking at the history of J-Wing, they appear to have mainly been a publisher. They did release one game on the Virtual Boy called Virtual Lab, but again, they didn't develop it. There's over 100 J-League licensed games released over the last 30 years, including a sizable amount by EA, which they farmed out to other developers, and Konami, who released a ton under their popular Winning Eleven series. Even with all of those games put out by these two companies, it only accounts for about half of the total J-League games released during this time, as Sega, Namco, Victor, Epoch, and a number of other developers released their own games using the J-League license. So what about J-Wing? Well, they have one other J-League licensed game in their portfolio, and it's on the Game Boy. They published it while JFA developed it, so no real leads there. J-Wing has been defunct for nearly 2 decades, and with so little info out there on this game, not much else is likely to be known unless design documents or a development cart comes to light. Out of Death Mount sounds like an interesting concept. You're on a train escaping Death Mountain in what sounds like a mix between Snowpiercer and Equilibrium. It's an on-rail shooter which touted dual pistol action, indicating the potential use of a unique control scheme which may have taken advantage of the dual D-pad setup. With a release date set for March 1996, the system was gearing up for a relaunch that never happened, and thus the game never released. This is another J-Wing distributed game, and it remains unknown who the developer was. New Japan Pro Wrestling Fierce Fighting Legends was a fully licensed game based on New Japan Pro Wrestling containing 8 wrestlers from the organization. The game is rumored to have been complete and received extensive coverage leading up to its slated release in December 1995. The game was so close to release, many people still speculate that it released in very limited numbers, similar to the situation with Surgical Strike on the 32X. As of this video, no ROM has been made public. It's assumed that the game's cancellation was mainly due to poor system sales in Japan, and not wanting to take further financial risk in manufacturing a game for hardware that never truly penetrated their game's already limited market appeal. Flying Henry was an action game where you played a balloon-like creature with large ears that could float around the stage. Enemies would approach from all directions, including the back of the screen, something that makes sense being the game plays out across 2 planes, allowing the player to transit between the foreground and background, something which I assume is similar to Guardian Heroes on the Saturn. Flying Henry was featured in a few magazines with a full-page preview as the December launch date neared. The writers seemed to indicate that the game was nearly complete, and though fun, it had an unusual slow pace that may make the player forget it's an action game. As you may have guessed, it never released, and outside of a handful of previews and accompanying in-game screenshots, we know nothing else. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has exactly one reference to it existing: December 1995 Nintendo Power Issue 79, page 113, where it's declared as a Winter 96 release alongside 2 other games: Nestor's Funky Bowling, which released in February of 1996, and 3D Tetris, which released in March the same year. So clearly, this list is referring to games on the cusp of being complete and releasing within a few months of this issue. There are a couple other games worth mentioning that didn't have enough information to justify dedicated segments. 3D Tank was in development by Boss Game Studios and was said to be a Battlezone clone. Strange Animal School and Night Landing, which were slated for December 1995 release, and Signal Rat, which was listed as a racing game set for February of 96, are 3 games that appear on multiple release lists with no real info having ever come to light. I want to give a huge shout out to Planet Virtual Boy, whose incredible community has worked tirelessly to catalog and track down everything Virtual Boy related. Specifically, I want to thank Benjamin Stevens, who's almost solely responsible for finding and translating almost every document we have from Japan regarding this system and its games. One crazy reality is most of the information regarding undocumented Virtual Boy games only made it into Japanese magazines, and with the short life of the system, it didn't leave many issues to cover the limited information released to these publications. So thanks again to Benjamin Stevens for his work, because without it, this series, it wouldn't be possible. That's it for now, and until next time, thank you for watching Retro Impressions.